Welcome to the weekly pivot for September 14th, 2025. All right, so we'll go over last week. We'll talk about upcoming events. We'll talk about the rate cut and normal seasonality discussion and analysis discussion. All right, so last week we were pretty on point. We were looking at the structure of the daily chart, which remained up, and the trend continued to be respected. That all played out. We were talking about daily compression, which we did get some expansion. It's a little weak. We'll talk about that in just a second when we look at the chart. We got our position golden gate, which we've been talking about. We're looking for that to close at 65.50, and that completed with this move to 6,600 this week. Market continues to show strength, and we are seeing signs of momentum slowing on the weekly, but we're continuing to ride that daily trend until it stops working and we start to see some structural change. So I think the main event, there's a bunch of stuff on here. Obviously, we've got an OPEX week this week, but I think the main event is Wednesday. We've got a Fed interest rate decision, and of course, Fed Chair Powell is going to talk right after that at 2:30 Eastern. I think the other events are probably not as big of a deal. I think Wednesday is going to be the main focus, and I think that's where the volatility is going to probably come into play. Speaking of that, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. My expectation is a 25 basis point cut on Wednesday. I think that the market is pricing that in, and I think that the probabilities are pointing towards that. Been talking about seasonality. We've had a green summer, and we're 75% of the time in the last 20 years we've had green September. So we'll see if that ends up materializing in the end of September. We still have a lot of September to go, and things can dramatically change before then. But we've also seen typically about in the last 20 years a little bit more than half of the Septembers have been green. That being said, I'm just going to continue to trade the chart. Speaking of the chart, here's the chart. We've been talking about this for a while. We have this daily structure with higher lows and higher highs that we've been putting in for a while. And this week is no different. We may be putting in a new higher high here. As we tapped 6,600, we closed this position golden gate. So daily structure remains intact. We have started to get some bullish expansion. And you can kind of see it here. It looks a little weak. The last time we had kind of a weak expansion was the last compression we had. And you can kind of see that these compressions and expansions are slowing down a little bit. And we're seeing that as well on the weekly, right? We're starting to see some momentum slowing down on the weekly. My expectation is we probably don't go much higher than 66.50 in the near term. And then that would be probably a local top before we get a daily mean reversion, another daily mean reversion. We may not even get to 66.50. It may just come back down at this point. We were talking about this range of about 6,400 to 6,500, 6,380. That held last week, and we broke and closed above it. So a little bit higher. I think we talked about this, where we've had kind of these slowing signals where we've had, a little push higher before we've had the mean reversion. I think that's kind of the case that we're in right now. We're going to be getting some sort of a mean reversion on the weekly again. In probably the next 4 to 5 weeks would not surprise me. In the past when we've had these slowing signals, these momentum slowing signals, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be instant, right? We've had situations a couple times where we've pushed higher before we've gotten the mean reversion, but I do think it is coming, and I do think that that's going to present the optimal value proposition for a move higher into the end of the year. Worst case scenario pullback would be like something like this pullback to 6,400. That's fine, but somewhere closer to 6,200 for us to be able to buy into the end of the year for a move maybe to 6,800. One final thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the P call. We've talked about this a few times. We're back down in this bearish zone, and often when we end up in this bearish zone, we've had some mean reversions, or we've had bigger moves back to the downside. So we're back in here, kind of roughly at the spot where we've had these mean reversions most recently on the daily. And so, I'm watching this. We're kind of in this zone where it makes sense for a pullback to happen soon. Certainly, we can go deeper into the zone first before we get the pullback. But, this is a pretty common scenario that we've seen where we've gone into the bear zone and then we've pulled back on the daily. Just another piece of information that's sort of giving me a sense that we are going to get a pullback soon. So that's your weekly pivot for September 14th, 2025. I'll see you in the next one.